Hello, good evening. Uh, I'm here just to speak about my latest book. It's called, as I have already posted on the Facebook, it's called Footnotes of History, A Tale of the Mahabharata. It's a retelling of the Mahabharata story in verse in five parts as ascribed to Vyasa, though there are many regional variations that exist. And I would just like to say that it took really 5 long years for me to come to this position. And I have been working steadily on the book for quite a long time. The first time it occurred to me was in 2015 when I thought that I was going to write a narrative poem on this. But it's because of the blessings of my elders, my parents who are no more, sadly, and because of the well wishers like you who are watching the video right now, that I could really write a poem like this. I'm really here to tell about two things. That is, the book will hit the e-commerce platforms, as I've been told by the publisher, by October 20. I hope, if we are lucky, because because of the corona and the pandemic, things are getting real slow. But there is nothing we can do regarding that. And the book really is in five parts. I mean, it tells about certain unknown episodes and characters in which have not really been dealt with the Vyasa's composition of the narrative poem. I mean, the first part deals with the pristine condition before the Kurukshetra war. It's called When the Slimy Frog Ruled. The story of Dhritarashtra and the peaceful condition that is existing in the Hastinapur and the surrounding area before the war. And there's a story called, there's a portion called The Earth Speaks, where, when the Pandavas uh, came to know, or better say that the Kauravas came to know that the Pandavas are living in a place called Matsya, which corresponds to modern day Rajasthan. They were going to break the incognito of the Pandavas, which was the condition that they have to really live for 12 years hidden, and 1 year would be as an Agyatwas. I mean, they'd be living incognito in the kingdom of King Virata. So, what's happening when the huge army of the Pandavas are going through a village? I mean, the village had to feed everything. So, what happens to the wretched of the earth? That is something which I have dealt imaginatively in the poem called, in the part of the poem called The Earth Speaks. Then you have the story of Shakuni. Shakuni is an extremely important character in the epic. Let's forget that sinister voice that has always accompanied him whenever he has made an appearance in the TV show. Forget his broken tooth, forget his lame condition. It wasn't like that. Shakuni had a very tragic tale, and I came to know from an undocumented source that Shakuni also had 100 brothers and a single sister. Really mind blowing. The source is not documented, obviously, but still it's there. And Shakuni and his 100 brothers were fed with a single morsel of rice per day in the concentration camp when Gandhara province, which is present day uh, Afghanistan and parts of Pakistan, you had the Gandhara culture. When Pandu or Bhishma really conquered that area, then Shakuni was basically imprisoned with his 100 brothers, and all his 100 brothers died. And Shakuni alone was left alive because all the 100 brothers and his father, King Sobala, decided to combine all the rice and give it to Shakuni so that he could live. So Shakuni's real enemy were not the Pandavas; his real enemy was Bhishma. So Shakuni was actually in a mood to annihilate the clan of Bhishma, and that is what he did. And he was an extremely great worshipper of Lord Shiva. There is still a temple in Kerala. It's called Pavitreshtam or something. I'm gonna have to look into the poem again. Where there is a temple dedicated to Lord Shakuni. And it's here that it is believed that he did severe penance or prayashchitta to attain moksha because of his role in the Mahabharata war. Then there is a section on the hidden desires of Draupadi, Malini, whatever you call her. Many of us do not know that Draupadi had a secret love for Karna, and you know there is an episode called For Draupadi or for Draupadi where I have really tried to show how Draupadi confesses her secret love for Karna to Krishna, Lord Krishna, and she is really bored of the false pride of her five husbands. Because when they were in the forest, they were actually doing nothing. They were just whiling away their time until Lord Krishna came and told Arjuna to acquire the Divyastras or the celestial weapons that really gave him the edge in the Mahabharata war. Mind you, he never had the Pashupatastra till now. There is another very interesting portion which I have dealt in the poem. It's called uh, I mean where there is a story of Sahadeva. It's called the Silent Fifth. I mean, Sahadeva is somebody who doesn't talk much and he always remained mute because, again, according to an undocumented source, when Pandu was living in the forest with his five sons, uh, when Pandu was about to die because he had a curse that if he had a sexual intercourse with his own wife, Madri, then he would die. I mean, that was a curse given to him by sage Kidamba, who was disturbed in his own lovemaking, killed by Pandu accidentally by an arrow. And when Pandu was about to die, he called all his five sons and told them to eat his brain. I mean, that's staggering. That's staggering. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there are so many unknown episodes. It's a primary epic, we all know, and stories float in the form of legends and folklore. So I took this story and weaved it into a pattern. And always remember that Sahadev was an extremely expert astrologer who knew everything beforehand. He knew all. He knew about the Mahabharata war. He knew about the proposed quote unquote disrobing, because as I was told in one of seminars held in a certain university in India that there was no disrobing in the real Mahabharata, and that what Draupadi did was a kind of a mock enactment of a helplessness which has been taken to be her disrobing by some, by Dushasana. And he knew all. He knew all. And Duryodhana came to his tent at the time of the war to know what would be the most best time to start the war, the most opportune moment to start the war. So there is an episode to that, devoted to that. You have the story of uh, Vikarna. Vikarna was actually the third son of Dhritarashtra, because we all know that Dhritarashtra had 100 sons and one daughter, Gandhari. So I mean, when I was searching about the sons, and the other people, the list basically starts with Duryodhana and it ends at Dusashana. We do not know anything about that. But Vikarna is somebody who was an extremely important character in the epic, in the sense that he opposed. He was the only one to oppose the disrobing of Draupadi in the assembly, in the Sabha Parva. And what happens is that when Vikarna was fighting the Pandavas, because he was with the Kauravas, kind of a Kumbhakarna figure, and when he was with the Kauravas and when Bhima came before him, Bhima said that I cannot fight you because you alone know dharma. And Vikarna said that what I did in the assembly was my dharma, and now you kill me and I'll fight you. That's our dharma. There's nothing else that can be done in this dharma yuddha. So there are so many episodes I have dealt. The last one called A Pool of Dead Souls, Part 1, Part 2, deal with the devastation caused by the war, and very much prevalent, very much applicable to our times. Look at the world today. Look at Corona. Why to talk about Corona? Corona is just 8 to 10 months old. Talk about the global meltdown. Talk about the fear of nuclear annihilation. Talk about everything that it's not worthwhile for a human being to live. To think that it's not worthwhile to live today. So that's there. So it's called A Pool of Dead Souls. There are many such episodes which I have dealt in my book called Footnotes of History, A Tale of the Mahabharata. It has been a long journey, my friends. I know you're all there. It will hit stores in mid-October if I'm lucky, if we are lucky. Uh, just grab your copy if you can. You have my phone number on the FB. If you want, you can call me for any questions. It's there in the book itself. And let's hope for the best, because we are going through some very troubled times now. And the book ends with a note of hope. The book ends with a note of universal brotherhood, love, affection, faith in the life-sustaining impulses that can save us all. Thank you. I'll be back with next series of videos where I'll be reading portions of the book. It's around 290 pages long. My God, I mean, I didn't know it was going to be so long, but it's what the publisher told me. Uh, it's long. It's long. I hope. I was fortunate enough that Professor Romila Thapar emailed me back and told me that it's an interesting idea, Dr. Chatterjee, that you're doing. Professor Subhash Kak doesn't need an introduction. He's an extremely busy person, was the Padma Shri awardee, but still he replied back. Kevin McGrath, it's all because of your best wishes. Thank you. I'll be back.